I remember President Eisenhower during our administration and the vice presidential days used to say on occasion that he had learned as a military commander that it's very important never to tell your enemy what you're going to do, because then he'll be ready for you. But he says it's just important never to tell him what you're not going to do, because then that will encourage him to do things he otherwise might not do. And in this case, that was a mistake, in my view, to do that. The other thing I would say is that with regard to the hostage rescue operation, that President Carter and the Pentagon, I assume they are the ones that joined in the decision, made a mistake and are not, again, following out an Eisenhower dictum. And that dictum is that when you make a play of that sort, you always assume the worst. You cannot assume that your intelligence is going to be absolutely accurate. I have a very interesting reaction in that respect that Eisenhower had at the time of Lebanon in 1958. Everybody will recall in 1958 in Lebanon, there was a crisis because the government there was under attack. There was a possibility that the Soviet Union might intervene, and Eisenhower had to make a decision as to whether or not to send Marines in order to establish peace. And I remember the briefing that occurred in the Oval Office, and Eisenhower heard Allen Dulles, the head of the CIA, and Foster Dulles, the Secretary of State, brief him and to recommend that we send in a Marine group in order to keep order. And when they gave their report, they indicated that they did not think there would be any intervention from the standpoint of the Russians, and then that it would be a peaceful operation. And Eisenhower sat back, and after they had given this report, he said, "Foster, let me ask you something. Let us assume our intelligence is wrong. Are you prepared to take the next step?" President, I'm 90% sure that there will be no problem. But if there is, yes, we should be prepared to take the next step. The point of that anecdote is that Eisenhower would never have made the mistake of the Bay of Pigs. When the intelligence proved to be wrong, there wasn't the uprising that they had hoped at the time, and when it was necessary to have committed more air strength than had been planned, or at least not to cut back on what had been planned. In other words, in the hostage situation, rather than sending enough helicopters plus one, you used to say send twice the number to be sure that if there were, as there turned out to be, mechanical or other difficulties, you'd be prepared to carry out the operation to a successful conclusion.